Aristotle when they'd sit and ponder the deep, complex issues plaguing society, as well as taking notice of things going on around them and trying to make sense of all of it. And today, my philosophical thought experiment was, why is every single new movie that's coming out flopping? With the exception of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, most new movies that are coming out over the last few months are setting new records for how dog shit they're performing in the box office. And I just read this headline here about a movie I didn't even know existed being DreamWorks' lowest opening for anything they've ever made, called Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken. It brought in just $5.2 million so far on opening weekend. And this is a $70 million budget, and that doesn't account for any of the marketing costs. So this is looking like a historic bomb here. And this isn't alone. Elemental is still in theaters and is not performing well. It was Pixar's second lowest opening ever, I believe. Like, what's going on here? And following this thought line to its natural conclusion, you reach two questions. Are movies just getting worse, which is why people don't really care to go see them? Or do people just not really have an interest in going to a movie theater anymore? Pretty much everything we do in our day-to-day lives has become extremely convenient, whether it's ordering food or just general entertainment. You can watch pretty much every show and movie from the comfort of your own home. And you don't have to pay individually for each movie you want to see because eventually they hit streaming platforms that you have a subscription to. So going to a movie theater is inconvenient. You have to drive to the theater. It's also expensive because the ticket prices just keep increasing exponentially. And God have mercy on your soul if you get a little appetite or a little thirsty and decide to buy something from the concession stand, because then you're out another $50 buster, because that shit is outrageously priced. It is downright criminal how expensive things are at a movie theater. So let's dive into the first question. Are movies just getting worse? And is that the reason why people aren't bothering to go? Because it's not worth their time to see it? I think the answer to that is probably no. But I do think movies are getting less original. Because the budgets for films have gone up so much, like most films are like $70 million plus budgets. Most of the time even going north of 100 mil, 200 mil, and in the case of like Indiana Jones, 300 mil. These are, and it's an outrageous amount of clams in order to produce a modern blockbuster. So when you're gambling with that amount of money on a movie, most of the higher ups like to make sure that it's the safest possible investment they can make with it. So they choose to either make sequels or reboots or remakes, something that they know has a built-in core audience. And I think that leads to a lot of people feeling like they've just kind of already been through this song and dance before. You're not getting a ton of unique experiences from huge blockbusters anymore. And I think that does play a role in it, but I don't think that necessarily means the movies themselves are worse. They're just so much safer. But I do think this is an example of, this is a very safe, generic movie that most people probably wouldn't bother to see. And that bet is no longer working these days. But I think by far the biggest contributing factor is it's pricing people out. And it's just not convenient anymore, whereas everything else in the world is just getting more and more convenient. Whereas going to a movie theater is going the opposite direction. It's getting less and less convenient and more expensive. So it's just one of those things where I think that's the biggest thing at play here for a lot of these flops that have been happening. Not necessarily that the projects are shittier. Like Ruby Gillman could be an absolute masterpiece. I have no fucking idea. But I don't feel like going to a theater to see it because it just doesn't really capture me as like worth the inconvenience of going there for it. Same with Elemental. Elemental just seems like a really kind of generic film. And I feel like that's the way a lot of people feel because it's expensive and it's inconvenient. So that's kind of my guess for the flops. I think in order to stand out in the box office, it's being proven recently that you need a very strong, good movie. Like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That film is absolutely exploding. Like, I think now we're entering an age where people are only going to go to a theater if it really seems like something special that will be worth their time and they'll get a great experience out of it, as opposed to how it used to be where people just kind of go to a theater to see anything, even if it looked kind of generic, because, you know, they were in malls and everyone was out and about, like in malls and shit. So I just think times are changing in the movie industry, and the top level execs aren't really realizing that, so they're just pouring more money into generic films, safe films, things they perceive as safe, and they're not getting the returns that they're expecting anymore, which I think is an overall good thing. I'd love more creative projects. I think everyone would. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. That's it. See ya.